When you recover from an eating disorder, it'll show up in other ways for a while. Now, does that pressure, that voice start to talk to you in your career? Does it start to talk to you in your relationships?
I hope you enjoy this conversation with Natalie and sending you all my love.
Why don't we start with our feet on the ground and just feel our seat into the chair, and we'll just feel our breath move into our belly and into our ribs and our chest. And just find your center, find your breath. Are you ready?
Yes, you already have me emotional. Obviously, it's National Eating Disorder Awareness Week, so I wanted to sit down and talk to somebody that it really resonated with. Can you just introduce yourself?
I'm Natalie Leon. I'm a wellness and fitness advocate and speaker and author. I have a book called Loving Me, The 5 Connections to Loving Yourself.
And you're a performer as well.
So I started performing young, got into UCLA for theater and film, and then it was when I was there, my body started going paralyzed and with a genetic condition that I have. And when that started to happen, I was also a trainer, and I was obviously trying to get into the industry. And so there were a lot of pressures, feeling like my body was out of control, and I didn't know how to control it. So I started controlling my food more and over exercising. And, as a trainer, I was pushing all the time too, because in there, it's this idea that you have to look a certain way. So everywhere I turned, it was all about image. And I couldn't control my image. I couldn't even control my body. So after a really, really long struggle, I ended up realizing that there was something really, really off and that I needed help. And then after a lot of recovery, I ended up co-creating an eating disorder clinic, later a women's wellness center. And so I've dedicated the last 25 years to speaking on this.
We're out of control of so much. Why do you think that manifests as an eating disorder for some people?
When people are struggling with an eating disorder, it's not about the food. It's just that the food has become the thing that they feel like they can control because something in their life feels out of control. And so I kind of gave that example how that manifested in my life. But for some other people, it may be drugs, it may be alcohol, it may be different coping mechanisms that maybe aren't so healthy. And so we all have like our way. And if you diet, that's really where the pivot happens, is when you start practicing disordered eating and it starts to take over your life, it becomes an eating disorder.
I thought I was doing something great. I felt strong. I felt good. I thought it was normal to eat salads all the time. And it wasn't until it became a habit that I realized something was wrong. Do you see that with a lot of people?
Yes. Like at first you feel, okay, I'm doing so great. Like you said, I'm just eating healthy. I'm just working out. And then it becomes, oh my gosh, I can't take a day off. Like what happens if I eat the pizza? And then we start to put food in categories, good food, bad food. And when we do that, it automatically becomes a mental game, because then what happens is you have this piece of cake in front of you and you say, if I eat the cake, then I'm a bad person. And if I don't eat the cake, then I'm doing so good. Or, oh, I've been doing so good, I deserve the cake. And so you're constantly in this yo-yo situation, which is pulling at your heartstrings because you can never win this game. You can see how it starts, you little by little, you start to edge out things in your life. And before you know it, you're missing out on your life.
Yeah, there's just so much darkness and isolation. I feel like there's a lot, it's very similar to addiction in a lot of ways, because it is an addiction, but there is something about like having to put this hand to mouth, this habit of you have to eat every day. That's what made it hard for me to be like, is this something I'm going to have to struggle with my whole life?
Here's the thing to remember is that when you're on the healing path, you're never going backwards, because you always are building awareness.
One of the misconceptions when I was healing was, okay, well, how am I going to heal if I'm going to just want to eat all these bad foods all the time? But actually your body, like, you need to intuitively listen to what you want to eat, right? And that was a big part for me.
When I had the eating disorder clinic, one of the things that we would do, and I actually talk about this concept a lot in my book, which is it's that intuitive eating and even mindful eating. They're similar and different, but being able to really check in instead of sitting there food journaling like calories, fats, carbs, and all these things. How about start writing about how you actually feel around these foods and how you feel when you eat them and how you feel, what is going on when you look for them. One of my favorite stories is I used to binge on trail mix, and I thought I was like so healthy because I'm like, look at me, I'm a trainer. All I binge on is trail mix. So I was eating all the chocolate out of it. So really what's going on there is there's nothing healthy about it. I was exhausted. It was at 3 o'clock every day. And look at all the different self-care things I could have been practicing instead of turning to food. And like you said, it's because we do have to eat. And so it's very different than just saying, you know, well, just stay away from food. You can't do that.
Right.
So it is a process of relearning how to handle food.
You talked about orthorexia. Can you explain that to people too?
Orthorexia starts with this concept of perfection, that all of my ingredients need to be perfect. I need to eat super clean. I may be over exercising, and a fear of being unfit and severe restriction. Like, okay, this week I'm cutting out these 5 groups, and man, I still didn't lose weight. Okay, next week I'm cutting out, 2 more. And while there's certain processes in place that are holistic, that you can actually do something like that in a healthier way, when it becomes this game of weight and pressure and really like that mind control that is miserable, where you can't even be present in life, it takes everything you can just to function every day. I can see it's like right on the edge of moving into the classic eating disorders, being binge eating disorder, bulimia, and anorexia. But for me, I was more, I would say like exercise bulimia. I kind of moved on that, which was I was a trainer and fitness instructor. So I was working out all the time. And then it became this game of, am I eating too much? Am I not eating enough? And that's really what it was for me. That was college. I mean, that's just what we did. And that's the other thing. It wasn't talked about. So you just said, well, everyone else is doing it. And it's about image and all these things. So you don't know, something's wrong in here, especially if you grew up with a family like we did, something's wrong, but it just seems normal.
I want to talk about just the effect on just our culture. I feel like that's such an important thing. I mean, I was telling you, I opened my TikTok app, and you don't have TikTok, right?
No. No, I do not.
I mean, maybe it's for the best because I might delete it. It's just this constant information and this short form content of how you need to be and how like people dishing on everybody's lives and gossip. And when do we feel like we had the authority to speak on people's drama? Everyone has their own news outlet, them with a green screen. I'm like, this is so stressful. I mean, that was one of the main reasons I wanted to do this with you. It's because you have a really positive impact on what you put out there. But don't you feel like it's unhealthy? Like, shouldn't there be some parent out there being like, stop gossiping about people's lives or writing I feel like it's so bad for society. I don't know how to stop it.
It's something I just shared about on my social media, which was, first of all, I didn't even want to start social media. I've been doing my business for 25 years. I didn't even want to get into social media because of all this. And then I said, you know what, maybe I can at least bring some positivity into it and shed light on everything we're talking about. But I was sharing about it today of how toxic it can be. There's things that we can do. But first, like in order to fix that, we have to fix ourselves. Like I always say, parents or people that are coaches or in charge of groups or whatever it is, like you have an influence. We all actually have an influence no matter what over people. So watch how you speak to yourself first so that you won't say things that other people are listening or watching you. Like I didn't learn to body shame from my mom. I learned it from someone else's mom. Yeah. And I'm not blaming her at all. That's her own pain. And I understand that. Oh. Heal yourself before it really continues to affect people. And I would say, hurt people when they choose not to heal.
I know this to be true. I don't know if it's like a Buddha quote, but he says, we ourselves must walk the path. Like no one can save us but ourselves. And there's so many different times where my poor parents tried to step in, try to do something, I'm sure with you too, and no one can, all they can do is support, but you have to be the one to look yourself in the mirror and say, this is not going to change until I make that decision.
Exactly. And so it comes down, like, the root of this is self-worth. It's knowing that you are enough beyond your reflection. And what's happened in our society is we have become all about reflection. What you do, what you wear, what you, how you show up in the world. It's all about reflection. And there's nothing about like who you are as a person, as a value. I get it. I understand why that's happened. But at the same time, we need to watch this because our kids are absorbing it too. And I can't imagine, I was just sharing this today, I can't imagine trying to heal now, like with social media and everything and the pressures. I mean, it wasn't there when I was struggling, and it was already bad enough.
Yeah, what is that like as a mom to see your daughter with that?
Yeah, well, one of the reasons I'm really happy I healed before having her is I don't pass that on to her. That was a big motivator, and it's still a big motivator to stay well with my health conditions, you know. But she has a different relationship with food. She knows when she's hungry. She knows when she doesn't want to eat. She knows that sometimes it's okay to eat for fun. I mean, she just eats when she wants to eat, and food is just food. And that's the way it should be. So I'm very careful not to send messages like, don't eat the brownies, they're bad, or make sure you eat all your broccoli. And she knows food has nutritional value and which foods maybe aren't as nutritious. I don't focus on, oh, you're so beautiful, you're so this. I may tell her that with other compliments so that she knows her worth. Or when she does something really good, I'm not like, oh, see how good you are. Instead, maybe, how does that make you feel? So that she starts to internalize her own self-worth.
I have an absolutely amazing mom too, who she's just the greatest. And it's just so crazy that as a parent, you can do all you can do, but they're still going to be exposed to other things like people's TikToks.
She does not have social media, and I'm going to hold off on that one as long as I can.
So your book, you talk about, is it 5 principles?
I talk about the 5 connections to loving yourself, the connections to your mind, your body, your heart, your spirit, which I think is so important. We don't talk about spirit enough. Like, how are we connected to ourselves? Like really deep down, something bigger than ourselves. That's a huge part. And then our relationship with others, because all of that affects how we relate to others. How we treat ourselves is how we are going to show up in the world. It is so powerful to journal and just to get it out of our head. I call that voice Ed. And Ed in the head, the voice of Ed. And he was mean. I mean, he was mean. And one of the biggest tips I ever give is you have to physically, vocally fight him every day. And when you hear him, because by the way, here's the thing I haven't really shared much about. When you recover from an eating disorder, it'll show up in other ways for a while. That's how crazy it is. So it'll be like, okay, I have my food now and I got my exercise down. I'm feeling okay in my body image. Now does that pressure, that voice start to talk to you in your career? Does it start to talk to you in your relationships? So see how self-worth just starts to move to other things in life.
Interesting.
And that is, again, goes to that core of knowing that you're enough outside of all of these things that we tell ourselves that we are.
How do we do that? Fighting Ed.
It's a muscle, right? It's a muscle. And like with resistance, you get stronger. It's the same as when I'm teaching fitness. It's like, you know, the way you're going to get that muscle stronger is through resistance. You don't get stronger by like looking at the weight, right? You got to lift it. You got to face it. You got to go to it and through it and understand you're going through it. You're not staying there.
It seems easy, but it's not.
It's going to be an everyday thing. And some days are going to be harder than others. And some days are just going to be awful. I mean, honestly, you know, there were months that I was out of commission. And I mean, between the paralysis issue and eating disorder, depression, anxiety, I mean, it was spiraling out of control. first of all, it took me admitting that something was wrong. And like you said, nobody else could fix it. I was blessed to have people that knew, okay, something's wrong. How can we get help? I'll share this. I also really strongly believe in holistic medicine. Acupuncture was huge for me, and acupressure. And then, of course, I shared about yoga and even equine therapy. I mean, there were so many things that really helped.
I always have a disclaimer that I'm not a doctor, because since sharing my story to friends or, anyone who's asked, which has been a lot of people, and I'm really blessed that they're asking me, but at the same time, it might not work for them, and a lot of times it doesn't. So I want to say get professional help. But with that disclaimer, things that have helped me have been having a faith in something else, like you said, having digestive enzymes, because I couldn't digest food for a long time, like herbs, huge. And I'm not giving this medical advice, but I do think it's important to share like tips like that sometimes.
I do too. And I'm careful how much I can share, but I have to be true to my story. And that is how I got better.
It wasn't that I was wary of telling my story, it's how and the words, because today everything can be misconstrued and there's so much you want to say. It means so much. You just want to get it out there, but then someone will come around and be like, she just told me to eat digestive enzymes and now I'm in the hospital.
Yeah, but when you come from the highest intention of just wanting to serve in some way, that is what it's about. And I think if we can stay focused on that as a culture and as a humanity, that it's about, like, I think the biggest gift of life is finding what your gift is. And if you don't know what it is, it's in your purpose. Like, if you don't know what your purpose is, it's in serving, it's in giving something away. And that is the best gift of life, is to have something in your hands to say, okay, I've overcome this and I want to help someone else, or even I am overcoming it, and let me take that person right behind me and help them.
When I first started healing, it was 5 years ago, I was like, okay, I don't know how this is going to help people, but it helped me in the moment by sharing. I think that that's, like you said, an important part of just your personal healing. You have to get it out, or else it's just gonna eat you alive, right?
Well, and that's where shame gets a hold of you. So I always say the lowest vibration you can ever feel is shame. It is the darkest. It will hold you down. You will have to hold on to any little piece of light, and actually sharing it sheds light on this darkness of shame. And so little by little, you're like an onion, right? You're peeling off these layers of pain and trauma, anything that's really happened, and even the shame itself, until you get down to the core of who you are.
Oh, I don't know if you know the stats, but the pandemic, I think, was really tough on people.
I was watching that because, again, we talked about it being coping. And so I think it's worse. Like, I know the stats are the stats, but I always say I think it's bigger than the stats, because most people struggling aren't talking about their struggle. But the good thing is that healing can happen. It is a daily practice, and sometimes it's a minute-to-minute practice, and you just start where you are. You don't need to start on Monday. You don't need to start next week. You just say, I'm going to start today, this next moment. How can I move to take care of myself? How can I think a little bit different? How can I flip the little script in my brain and just challenge it? How can I eat this next meal? It's just one step at a time.
You might have a moment where you might slip up. For me, I tried to heal for like a full year probably before I got to that moment. And it's not going to be like cold turkey overnight for some people, right? It's a process of learning.
When I say, that's why the word journey is used so much, because that is what it is. It is a journey. And sometimes you're going to make a little bit of a wrong turn, but you have to trust that you're just on that path and you're going to get there. And finding mentors, finding doctors that understand this, because not all of them do. So finding people that really understand is huge.
I know why I said I'm afraid. I don't know how to tell people, because a lot of people, they do it out of love. I think, Yana, out of fear that they don't want you to be hurt anymore. They don't want somebody to be attacking you or pulling your words apart. So why do you think it is important?
Because again, I don't think that the people that are really truly struggling with this say anything. So when you see somebody else, you go, oh, I'm not alone.
And so now we can say to people, before it goes out of hand, it's the littlest things that you think you're doing good for yourself that just snowball, and all of a sudden you have a full-blown eating disorder.
The more awareness you have, you'll know, right? If I tell you not to go down that road and you start to see those signs, then you're going to say, oh, maybe I shouldn't go down that road. And that's why bringing awareness is so important. It's my story, and I'm just grateful that you are sharing yours. I know that you're going to help so many people. And first, we'd have to help ourselves. And I just think it's very courageous what you're doing. And thank you for trusting me to be here with you today.
And obviously, get Natalie's book. Is there any other resources too we could leave people with, you think?
Breaking the Chains Foundation. They are wonderful, and they use arts, and I know you know them too. Each person is really showing, actors, musicians, all different talent is showing their story through art. It's just a beautiful thing.
If anyone is in LA, you can take a yoga class with Natalie, right?
Yes, it is March 25th. How to Love Yourself Be Live. I'll close it by saying I always say love and own all of you. Really love and own who you are, because you're here for a reason.
I love that. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I told everyone, I'm sick. And that was really hard for me to do. It's actually my 5 years of being fully healed from an eating disorder. Hopefully my story and my friend Natalie's story, they inspire you and show you that a full recovery is completely possible.